As I'm sure you know, retiring in Canada is not a tax-free paradise. However, it can be tax advantaged. In this video, we're going to go through a number of different income sources you may have in retirement and how they're taxed. We're also going to look at why it can be tax advantaged when you are in the retirement ages, usually around starting at age 65. Let's get into it. Tax, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a major consideration that I look at in every single projection that I do. And here's a great time for me to reiterate a distinction in how I look at taxes versus how many others do out there, whether it be the financial planning software that I use or other planners. I do not look at 2025 or the year that's in front of me and simply try to save as much tax as I can for just this year. Yes, I want to save taxes. I don't want to pay more than I have to. But when I'm doing a projection, I am looking at the aggregate value. If saving money now will cost me more money later, that doesn't make sense within reason, of course. So I'll be looking at the aggregate, and maybe I actually recommend higher taxes in early years to save long-term through your retirement projections. Every projection, again, as I'm sure you're aware, is different, but that is how I look at things. So let's start with just a quick review of how different income sources are taxed. Anything coming from a registered asset, whether that be an RRSP or a LIRA, anything coming from a pension, whether it be a private pension, defined benefit pension, CPP, OAS, those are all taxable just like income. One distinction here that's important to know: if you happen to qualify for GIS or Guaranteed Income Supplement, it has thresholds based on your taxable income that you're receiving. And while OAS is taxable, it does not count towards that threshold. So it's taxable, but it doesn't factor into that threshold, which is just kind of a one-off tax situation thing. From there, we'll move to your non-registered accounts, where only half of the gain that you experience when you sell an investment is taxable. Now, that half that's taxable, I generally recommend that you assume that half of that value will be going to taxes. In most provinces, 50% is the absolute highest tax bracket. A few provinces have it slightly higher, but if you set aside half of the gain, or 25% of the gain for taxes, you should have money left over come tax time, and you shouldn't be ambushed by a bill that you're not expecting for that sale. Last but certainly not least is your tax manipulation tool, the TFSA. There is no tax on the TFSA. There's no tax if it goes to your spouse as a successor holder if you pass away. There's no tax if it goes into your estate if you pass away. There is no tax in today's tax law on the TFSA at all. Will there be changes to that in the future? I certainly can't tell. I think it would be political suicide for whoever would make that change, so I don't see that happening, but the TFSA is a tax-free haven. I love them. I talk a lot about how I want to protect them for you so you can manipulate taxes in the future. There's no tax there on the TFSA. Another tax warning for you if you are in those retirement years is there's something called the OAS clawback. I believe it's actually called the recovery tax, but it's so known as the clawback. That's the only way that we actually address it. The thresholds there, if you're under the age of 75, is between $90,997 and $148,451. Now, keep in mind, that is your individual taxation. That's based on just one person. So your income taxable in retirement has to be over that $90,000 number before you see any clawback starting to happen. If you're over $148,000 individually, then you won't be getting any of your OAS. If you're over 75, that threshold, the bottom of it stays the same, but the top goes up to $154,196. These numbers, by the way, are for the July 1, 2025 cycle that'll be coming up very, very shortly. Now, let's get to some of the good news. And I talked about how at a certain age in particular, your taxes start to become a lot more efficient. And really that's at age 65 when they become incredibly efficient. It's because at 65, you get access to the third of three great non-refundable tax credits. The first is the personal amount. Everyone gets this one. I get it, you get it, everyone does. It's $16,129 as of 2025. This does assume that your income is under the threshold of $177,882, which statistically speaking is most people watching, as someone earning $177 is in about the top 2% of all income earners in Canada. You also get the pension credit. The first $2,000 of pensionable income is also tax exempt, whether that be coming from an actual pension or a defined benefit pension or a RPP, like when you built up at a job, or a RIF income or whatever it is. It's important to know you get that $2,000 of pension credit as well on top of the personal amount. From there, we also move on to the age credit if you're 65. And this is where tax efficiency really starts to ramp up and get really, really efficient. The age amount, like I said, you have to be over age 65. It is income tested. So if your income is over $45,522, you won't get the full amount, and it does diminish until $105,709. But if you're anywhere in there, you'll get some of the age credit. If you're getting 100% of it, it's $9,028. For those of you following along at home, that personal amount plus the pension amount plus the age amount totals $27,157 of non-refundable tax credit per person. If you happen to be in a couple, by CRA's definition of a couple, that's $54,314 of non-refundable tax credit. Meaning if your spending for a couple is around $60,000 a year and you're only drawing about $70,000 of income, these are just hypothetical numbers, don't get married to that ratio, the first $54,000 of a $70,000 income is all tax exempt. That is a huge win, and that's why it's so much more tax efficient after age 65. For an individual as well, because the age credit happens to come in as well. For those of you that are in a couple, you mix all these tax credits with income splitting to bring your incomes down as much as possible. And you can see why it's so much more tax efficient in retirement to get that money out compared to when you're in your working years. And this is where I talk about all the time that the RRSP conversation is a comparison to your marginal tax rate in your working years compared to your average tax rate in your retirement years. And if you have this much income splitting and tax credits, your average tax in the retirement years can be very, very low. It is not uncommon that I'm seeing single-digit average tax rates in my projections. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9%, something like that. Sometimes it's a lot higher. Don't get me wrong. Again, every case is different, but it's not uncommon for me to see single digit. Let's talk about income splitting just a little bit further, because there's some weird things to know there too. If you have a defined benefit pension, you can start to split that as early as 55 or when you start to receive it. But RIF income can't be split until you're 65. So certain incomes are splittable at certain times and certain other incomes are not splittable until other times. And it's also important to note that RRSP withdrawals are not splittable, but RIF withdrawals are. So if you're 67 years old and you want to do an RRSP withdrawal, but you want to split it with your spouse, you can't do that. You have to create a RIF, have the money transfer there for a cup of coffee, and then move its way out. Now it's splittable. There's a lot of weird nuanced rules for all these different income splittings. And again, last but not least, we have your TFSA, which is your tax manipulation tool. So if you're spending, like I was saying before, if your spending is around where the thresholds are for all those different tax credits, maybe you want to drop your taxes to zero. Maybe you take a taxable amount up to those tax credits, and then if you only need $5,000 more, maybe you take that from the TFSA, and now you're paying zero tax. It's very easy to see how we can get to a single-digit average tax rate if, in the reality, you're looking at 0%. So that's kind of a brief, quick summary of how taxes work in retirement. If it's time for me to review your projection to see if we can make it more tax efficient in retirement, there will be a link in the description down below. It comes right to me. Till next time, keep planning.